Hi, welcome to Khemani Kreations. Today we're going to make this chunky hand knit teddy bear hat. You're going to need some Bernay big blanket yarn. You're going to get 2 pieces of about 40 inches of the yarn. And you're going to need a tape measure, at least 3 stitch markers, and a pair of scissors. Welcome, welcome, welcome! Today we are going to be making this chunky knit ear hat. I was going to call it a cat hat. We could call it a teddy bear hat. I'm not sure. Call it what you like. We're going to make it today. So first we're going to start off by measuring the circumference of our heads. The average adult head size is between 21 to 24 inches. However, if you have thicker hair, if you have braids or even dreads, that could increase to up to 26 inches or more depending on how thick your hair is. So that's why it's so important for us to measure the circumference of our head so we know exactly how big or how small we want our hat to be. All right, so while you are measuring your head, we have a little commercial break. Sometimes you may run into a knot that comes directly from the skein. So I'm going to show you quickly what you can do to solve that problem because we don't want knots in our hats. It just is not cute at all. So you can try and untie it, but if that doesn't work, we can just cut out the knot and use the lighter method. There's a fiber in the middle of the yarn that joins the yarn together. So all we have to do is light that yarn on both sides. Some people light it on one side and melt it together. That's it. It's sturdy, easy, fast. Love it. If you need a more detailed explanation of the bird method, you can just click on the link above just to get a more detailed video. All right, let's move on. So I chained about 15 chains and I put it around my head, as you can see here, and it fit perfectly. We don't want it too tight, and we also don't want it too loose. Keep in mind that your hat will stretch a little bit as you wear it and wash it. It will get a little bit looser. So like I said, I started off with 15 chains. So let us start chaining our hat. In order to do the chain, we're going to leave a tail about 3 or 4 inches. Wrap the yarn around your finger, and then we're going to push and pull up a loop through that space, that hole there. There you go. We have done 2 chains already. So cool. So now we're going to continue on doing another chain. We're going to pull it up, push it up, and pull it through. So now I have 1, 2, 3. Keep in mind when we're chaining, we're going to make our spaces, our holes, 2 finger widths wide. So about this wide for every chain that we do. That way we can stay consistent. Okay, so we're gonna do 4. This is my 4th one. 5, 6, 7, and then I'll meet you when I get to 15. So let me double check that I have 15 in my chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and that's 15. So I did it. I'm up at 15. In my last stitch, I'm gonna make this just a bit smaller, actually pretty small. Now I'm gonna make this one 1 finger hole wide, and I will show you why when we're almost done our hat. You'll see why. All right, so I'm gonna make that a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to put another loop through this small loop. Make sure to hold on to it so it doesn't move. I'm going to pull that up, and we're going to make this one 2 finger holes wide. This is going to be the first loop in our first row. Okay? It will all be clear very soon. All right? Okay, so now is when we're going to bend this one over and measure it around our head to see if we have enough chains. All right, so you've done that. Make sure you bend over the last loop because, like I said, remember, this is going to be the first loop in our first row. All right, Okay, so now that you've done that, you've had the correct amount of chains, we are ready to form our hat. So pull this loop towards us like this. We're going to pull our chain over like that. We're going to take our tail, pull it up and through this space. So our tiny loop that we had made, we're going to pull our tail up through there gently, just like that, and we're done. We have formed our base of our hat. And as you see, this is the first loop in our first row. Okay? All right. So let's move on. So now we are going to start forming our hat. We're going to pull our working yarn through these spaces all the way around this chain. So we're going to pull it up just like that, pull it through, and make sure it is 2 finger holes wide. So we got that one there, and we're going to compare it to the one beside it. 2 finger holes wide. We're going to do that for the next one. Make sure they're the same size. To make it easier, you can lay your chain flat and ensure that both of your loops are the same size. And we do it for the next one. And you keep going all the way around your round and ensuring that your loops are the same size. Okay. I do advise, if you're a beginner, it's best to keep it flat like that so you can take your time to check to see that they're the same size. If you feel more comfortable, you could also lift it up and pull it through, but always ensure they're the same size. All right, so I'll meet you at the end of the first row. We are here. So you'll notice the end of our row is where our tail is. So this tail will help us keep track as to where the beginning and the ending of each row is. So we have completed round 1 or row 1. So now we're going to start on row 2. So now we're going to just pull up our working yarn through that loop that we already have. And we're going to continue on the same process. Make sure that they're 2 finger holes wide and that each one is the same size as the one before. And that is all we're going to be doing for all of our rows until we get to row 7. So at the end of row 6, I'll meet you guys back here. Just keep going till we get there. See you guys there. All right, so we've gotten to the end of round 6. So just in case you lose track, you walk away, you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what round I'm in. This is how you count what row you're at. So you'll be able to see how many rows you've done based on this. So this is 1 stitch, 1. So that's round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is going to be your 6th round. All right, so here's our little tail that will help us. So we know that this is going to be the beginning of round 7. So in the beginning of round 7, oops, got to do that one. All right, so round 7 is where we start our decreases. We're decreasing so that we get a more dome-like shape for our hat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna knit 3 and then do a decrease. Knit 3 and do a decrease and continue on till we get to the end of the hat, which would be at the end of round 8. So let's start right here. So let's go 1, 2, 3. And now is our time to do our decrease. So we're just going to put this loop over this one because we're going in this direction. So that's where your decreases are gonna go on that side. And then we're gonna pull up a loop. That's it. And make sure your loops are the same size. Again, we're just going to do that comparison. And then we're going to continue on making 3 knit stitches 1, 2, 3. Put this one over, pull up a loop, compare. 1, 2, 3. Put this one over, pull up a loop, compare. And that's all we got to do. So now we have come to the end of round 7, and we're going to continue that to the end of round 8. See you guys there. All right, so we've come to the end of round 8. Because I started my chain with 15 chains, at the end of round 8, I did 1, 2, 3, and then these next 2 would have been a decrease, but then that would be the beginning of round 9. So we don't go further than what we have here. So for example, if you had 2 more left here, you're not going to continue to round 9. So once you get to the end of round 8, no matter where you are, you just stop. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now we have our loops at the top, and we're going to start to close up our hat. We'll go across maybe 4 loops. I'm going to take my scissors and just cut right here. And that's it. So now we are going to close up our hat. We're going to take one of our stitch markers because, to be honest, sometimes I don't realize or I don't see where the first loop is. I don't. So I use my stitch marker because that's what they're there for. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take this tail here. Make sure you don't pull too hard. Number 1, because the yarn can be fragile, and number 2, we don't want to unloose our loops here. So we're going to pull through gently, and we're going to go all the way around and make sure all of the loops are on this tail. All right, so now I have come all the way around, and I'm going to put the tail through the first loop just so we're in a nice little circle. Gonna give a little gentle tug, and then I'm going to, there is a hole here. I'm going to put this tail in through this hole. Okay, also going to remove our stitch marker because we don't want to leave it in the hat, and then turn the hat inside out. All right, now I'm going to pull a little bit harder. Or sorry, pull a little bit more, not harder, sorry. Pull a little bit more to make sure that the top of the hat is closed, and it is done. Then I'm going to go over into the next loop over here, and then back over to this loop over here, and then I'm going to weave in our tail. So I'm just gonna go down on the diagonal through these loops here, and then up over here. Just make sure to tuck that portion in so it is barely visible. And there we go. We got that. So now we're going to turn our hat around. And here we go. We have a hat. Look at that. So all we have to do now is add the ears. All right. So for the placement of the ears, this is not a scientific method, but this is the method that works for me. Okay. All right. So you could, if this hat is for you, you can just put it on your head, point out to where you'd like it to go, and call it a day. You could do that if you'd like. However, if you're making this for somebody else and you're not obviously going to put it on your head, this is the method that I suggest. I'm going to get my stitch markers out, and I'm going to go on the side of each side of the hat, and I'm going to count up to round 5. So for this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the top of round 5, I'm going to put the stitch marker right in here, right there in between the stitch, right here. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gonna put my stitch marker right there in between the stitch. Okay, so now we have the placement. Okay, so now is when our 2 pieces of 40-inch yarn come in. Okay, so we're going to do this side first. Going to leave about 3 to 4 inches for our tail. I'm gonna fold it like this and try and make it as small as possible. So now you see we have our stitch marker here in the loop beside the stitch marker. So it's not this one, but the next one over. We're going to pull our yarn under through here, just like that. Make sure your tail is over on that side. And then on the next one over, we're going to pull up a loop through there. So we have 2 loops right there at the top. Then we're going to knit 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to knit 2 more. 1, and make your loops as small as you can. 2. All right, so we have 3 rows here. We're going to do a decrease and we're going to put this one over like that, and then we're going to pull our yarn through that hole just like that. Okay, then we're going to take the yarn, weave it through here, and then we are going to take our tail, our initial tail, we're going to put it in the space before the stitch marker, so right here. Then we're going to take this one and put it in the space behind the stitch marker. Okay, and there we go. Going to form up our little ears, well, our ear, sorry, so cute. Going to go on the inside, and this one we don't want to tie them too tight, but we also want them to be secure. So I'm going to tie it just a little bit like that. Make sure you're not pulling the ear down too hard, and make a knot. Remove your stitch marker. Sorry, remove your stitch marker. Okay. And that is it for this side. We're going to come back in and weave in those ends. But here is our first ear. I'm gonna fan it out a little bit. And there's the first ear. Now for our second, we're gonna do basically the same thing, but on the opposite side. So we're gonna leave about a 3 to 4 inch tail on this side. Pull up a tiny loop. So we have our, we have our stitch marker here. So we're gonna pull it up in this loop here, in this stitch, right there. And then the one beside it. Okay, then we're gonna knit 2. And then we're gonna knit 2 more. Okay, then this time, instead of going this direction, we're gonna go this direction, and we're going to pull our yarn through both of the stitches, both of the loops, and weave it in. Okay, and then we're going to turn it back like we did on the other one. Going to put this one, put it in the space before the stitch marker, and put the other one in the space after the stitch marker. Okay, again, don't pull too tight. Make a knot so we can have it secure. Remove your stitch marker. Fan out our ears a bit. And we have our ears. They are so cute. All right, so now we're gonna go back in and weave in our loose yarn. I'm gonna turn the hat inside out. And basically the same way that we weaved in our tail at the top, we're gonna do that with these ones as well. I'm gonna cut some of this one. And a little bit of this one. And just weave them in on the diagonal. Okay, so we're gonna weave them in and then we'll turn our hat right side out. All right, so I've turned my hat over. All we have left now to do is to weave in the tail. So I had promised you guys that I would tell you why we made the smaller loop in our beginning chain, because this is our smaller loop. Sometimes if you don't do that, it has this big long space here and then it creates a big gap. In order to avoid that, we just make it smaller from the beginning. So now all we have to do is take our tail, put it through the hole right here on the row over, put it in there in that space so it blends in with all the other stitches. And then we go again, turning our hat inside out, and we will weave in our tail. And you can cut this tail, it doesn't have to be that long. Okay, so we'll weave it in and I'll see you after. All right, here is our weaved in hat. It's important that we have all our tails hidden, looking good. Now we can turn our hat inside out or right side out. So we're done. Yay! So we have made our ear hat, our ear cat bear hat. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy your hat. Take care. Bye! Check out our newest creation, a chunky hand knit trapper hat. The link is in the description box below. Also, please check out our other creations. We have a chunky knit jacket, chunky knit duster, and our BBLs. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.